Okay, so I've spoken about the 7D, the original 7D, and so my next camera I'm going to talk about today is the Nikon D7100. Now this came out in 2013. It was Nikon's top APS-C camera before the D500 came out. 24 megapixel APS-C sensor, ISO from 100 to 6400, has the same autofocus system as the D800, though obviously not as many focus points. It has the 3D focusing, which 3D continuous focusing, which is wonderful. Or you can lock onto something and then recompose, and it stays stuck on it. And I cannot understand why it's taken Nikon so long to introduce it into their mirrorless system. That should have been one of the first things they did, because people always moaning about autofocus, especially with Panasonic's cameras until recently. They're new ones that have much better autofocus, and Canon of course have their can't remember what it's called now. Anyway, getting back to it, the D7100, so 24 megapixels. You can get one used for about £300 in really good condition. That's obviously twice what I paid for the 7D, which I paid £150 for that, and that's in awesome condition. So yeah, around about 300 quid, and for that you'll get a really capable solid camera. You can use it for portraits, landscapes, macro photography, weddings I suppose, though I really wouldn't push the ISO above 800, but that's just the rule I have for all my cameras. I don't want to push it above 800. I find with a lot of cameras, as soon as you get past 800, the noise you get just starts to skyrocket. So yeah, that's the level I would use for that, 800 at the most. They will notice from some of these photos that you're seeing up, some are in black and white, some are in colour, and there's a cunning little thing there. The ones in black and white are ones that I've re-edited as part of my retrospective project, of which everything has to be in monochrome for that, because most of the stuff I've done in the past has actually been in colour and not monochrome. So this is an added challenge, and I may actually continue that into new work that I will shoot this year. That I haven't decided yet, but I might do that. So yes, the colour ones, they are original edits from the time that I edited them after taking the photos. So most of these are from 2013, 2014 and the first few months of 2015, at which point I traded it in for a D800. Now one of the things I found, it may just be my actual photography skills and nothing to do with the camera, but what I have found is I'm not been able to get particularly sharp sports type or action type photos, but that could just be me or the lens I was using at the time, because the lens I was using at the time was a varifocal zoom lens, one of those Tamron 28-300s, the first one, not the later one they brought out. In fact, I've used both, and in both cases I've found them to be quite soft lenses, so I would not recommend those lenses, especially with no anti-aliasing filter on this camera, which I hadn't mentioned till now. The if you don't know what an anti-aliasing filter is, it's a tiny little filter in front of the sensor, and what it does is it takes a tiny bit of sharpness out of the image that you're shooting. And the reason it does that is because if you've ever seen on television someone being interviewed in a striped shirt, and they have those weird lines across that sort of go all over them, and it kind of almost glows, that kind of effect is because of the lack of an anti-aliasing filter. I think that's called moire. You can correct me if I've used the wrong terms, but you understand what an anti-aliasing filter does. Now of course Nikon and Canon both brought out cameras which have a cancellation filter in there that cancels it out, and that would be the D800E, which which is the camera I have at the moment, along with the 7D Mark 1 and the Canon 5DSR. Now, I have owned a 5DS and a 5DSR as well, and I'll be talking about those probably in a few weeks, maybe a month's time, when I get to those in the retrospective. I've still got all my D800 stuff to go through first before I get to that. And as you can see from the images that I've been going through whilst I've been chattering away, black and white or colour, the sharpness is pretty good. I mean, I used a multitude of different lenses, used that, like I said, that Tamron zoom lens, which is not the best lens in the world, but also, believe it or not, a lot of those Shoreham Harbour photos that are in black and white and colour, they're quite sharp. They were taken during Blue Hour, and the approach to Blue Hour on Boxing Day 2014, and that was taken with the kit lens that came with the camera, which I think was an 18-105, very focal lens, obviously, but I must have set it slightly more closed down to keep the aperture the same throughout the entire zoom range. But there's also photos in there with the DX 40mm macro lens, and that's a really good lens. I'm really, for the money you pay for it on this camera, it's really good. So yes, there's that, and I used a Sigma wide angle lens. I'm not entirely sure of what the focal length for that was, but those will be for more the Hove Park type shots that you'll see a few in there as well, black and white and colour again, mostly black and white I think. So yes, so who's this camera for? I think if you're looking for a camera with a little bit more resolution and sharpness, and you don't mind it not being a mirrorless camera, so you're not interested in 4K video, you just want a camera that you can pull out, you can stick a full frame lens on it, there's no difference, it's only a 1.5 crop, so if you bought say you pick up the 24-120 f4 kit lens, which is the full frame kit lens basically, that turns it into a 36-160 something lens, and you only have to stop that down to, and that's stabilized and it's weather sealed as well, which this camera is as well. It's weather sealed. It's a proper rugged camera. I've taken it to horse racing at Fontwell in West Sussex, and it started to rain and it was perfectly fine, didn't break down, no water got in or anything. The only issue I had with the camera at the time was that, and this was an issue that was happening on a number of Nikon cameras at the time, so there's this one and it was the D600 as well, so there was a little bit of oil coming off the shutter, gone onto the sensor, and I had to take it to a camera shop and get it cleaned off. I managed to clean most of the dust spots off, but it was this tiny bit, and when I got it back, no problem, perfectly fine, never had the problem again. So that is something to bear in mind, but I would imagine if you pick up one in good condition for around £300, which is roughly the market value on MPB, I'll just have a quick peek to look. Let's have a look here. £324, light new, 2000 shutter actuations. I mean, come on, 2,000 shutter actuations for just over £300. You can't get a mirrorless camera for that. And of course, I will be talking about mirrorless cameras later, after I've gone through the 5D S and the 5DSR. It'll be the Fujifilm's X-T2, which is the same resolution as this and has no anti-aliasing. None of the Fuji cameras have anti-aliasing filters on, and it has 4K video. But you're looking at another £350 just for a goodish condition one. You're looking for a bit more for a really good one, but that's a conversation for another day. So getting back to this camera, the dynamic range is just wonderful on this camera. I mean, I have a preset that I use to import all of my photos from any Nikon camera basically. Well, actually any camera completely, and what it does is it pulls up everything out of the shadows, everything, all the blacks up, all the whites and all the highlights, so I get the full dynamic range of the whatever photo I've taken. And what that does is it gives you the biggest flexibility to decide what you're going to do with the photo. Do I want to keep the highlights where they are? Do I want to blow the highlights out? Which if you've seen another YouTube photographer, I think it's James Pops, he likes to really blow the highlights out to focus your attention in on darker elements in his photos and the actual subject matter, rather than distract you with, say, a slightly nice sky. So yes, the dynamic range is the same with the blacks as well. I mean, and when you pull it out, there's not a lot, if any, noise in there at all until you get past that ISO 800. Once you start getting past ISO 800, then you do start to see a little bit of noise. But if you turn it into black and white, it just looks like film. It just looks like grain. And with the new AI denoising feature they've got in Lightroom Classic, that can deal with that very well. I mean, I've had the software deal with the Sony 1-inch sensor. I can't remember the name of the camera, the little pocket camera type thing, and that was with 3200, 6400 ISO, and there was lots of noise in that, and it denoised them very well. So on a bigger sensor like this, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Now, if you want a little bit more flexibility with ISO, you can, instead of going for the D7100, you can go up to the D7200, but then you're adding about another 150 quid to your price tag there, and you're essentially getting the same camera, maybe with some tweaks like the difference between the D800, the D800E and the D810, where the D810 didn't have an anti-aliasing filter, so they got rid of it. That's the first one of their full frame cameras, I think one of the first, that they took it off from. So yes, there's that. And it has a higher ISO range, so instead of going up to just 6400, I think it goes up to 25,000. I've got it here. It goes up to 25,600. Again, it's only 1080p video, 1/8000th of a second shutter speed, which is the same as the D7100, I believe. No, oh, where is it? Yep, exactly the same. So you're getting virtually the same camera, just slight incremental improvements, but you're paying an extra 150 quid for it. So if you're not going to be shooting at high ISOs, you might as well save your money and you use it to buy glass instead. Yes, so who do I think this camera is aimed at? So I think this is aimed at the sort of someone who doesn't want to go mirrorless because they're really expensive, even used, unless you're looking at getting micro four thirds, which are actually quite cheap now, and that's because their market share has just fallen away. If you're looking to go into mirrorless, I would not recommend, and you don't want to spend a lot of money, I would recommend Fujifilm every time, because you get so much for your money. I'll give you an example with the XT2. You get 24 megapixels, the same as the D7100. You get 4K video, dual UHS, I think they're both UHS-2 SD card slots. You get their fantastic film simulations. You get a weather sealing, and their lenses, their kit lens, the 18 to 55 f2.8 to f4 lens, that you set that to f8 and the ISO to 800, and you will get tack sharp images, because that lens is such good value for money, and they're supposed to be bringing a new upgrade to that, but it's going to be difficult to top that lens, I think. So yes, getting back to the D7100, yeah, it's a really nice camera to shoot, intuitive, quite basic like most DSLRs of their time were, so there's not much fiddling around to do. You just decide what you want on each one, whether you want to shoot RAW, RAW plus JPEG, or RAW and then redundancy RAW to the other card, which is always a good idea in my opinion. And then you can choose the different focus modes. I would use the 3D continuous focus mode because it means you can lock, if you want to lock in on something and then you suddenly decide to recompose, you could miss your focus. Whereas if you still want a particular element to be the focus of your photograph, but say off to one side, using that 3D focus, you can just move the camera and it sticks to it so well. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed the images. Like I said, black and white ones are re-edited, colour ones aren't. If there's something you would like me to talk about that I haven't spoken about, do let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Okay, until next time, goodbye.